What's up, guys? Well, I want to do a little video for you guys this afternoon. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about the GCSE exams because that time is coming up. For a lot of you guys, are getting ready to go off on study leave if you haven't already. It was around this time 8 years ago that I went off on study leave. I remember we came back after the Easter holidays, and then we were in school up until the May half term, and then we didn't go back after the May half term. I think it took me a little while to sort of get used to the fact that obviously although all of the other kids were going to be going back to school as normal after the May half term, we weren't going to, obviously we as the year 11s weren't going to be doing that. Obviously once we finished the half term, that was basically it. We were off on study leave and we were only having to go into school to sit our exams, and that's it. We'd go home again. We weren't obviously doing 4 days at school then. So the last day, obviously, I think I found the last day before the May half term, well, obviously, before the May half term, quite tough because obviously, it was sort of, saying our goodbyes to one of the other students because we weren't going to be seeing them after the May half term. They weren't going to be seeing us because we were going to be in school at different times. It's obviously when they had the exams going on, the school was always, the other kids would always start school at a different time, so we didn't really see. Well, we weren't not really going to see them after the May half term. I mean, obviously, with I can imagine a lot of you guys are feeling very, very nervous ahead of your GCSE exams, knowing that they're coming up. I mean, it's perfectly natural to feel nervous. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling nervous about those exams, but you're always going to be feeling that, like, you're always going to be feeling very anxious and nervous. I think that's something that I can relate to because I know that's certainly how I felt in the lead up to my exams. I mean, it's like when you first go into year 11 in September, you think, oh, the exams are months away, they're not going to rear their head, they're not going to be rearing their head for a while. But it's like before you know it, you blink and the exams are creeping up on you, and they're only literally like a few weeks or so away. Which is why it's so important to make sure that you're getting all of your coursework done. You're in school 99% of the time, because it's fundamentally important. I mean, I think obviously as long as you've been in school, you've not missed too much time off school. You've been doing all of your work and your lessons and attending all of your lessons. Um, you've been submitting all of your homework and all that sort of thing. You're good to go. You've not really got anything to worry about. The best thing you can do is always try to think positive going into exams. You don't you should never go into exams thinking negative, thinking the worst is gonna happen, thinking that you're gonna fail your exams or that something is gonna go wrong, because if you keep telling yourself that something is gonna go wrong, if you keep telling yourself that things are gonna be okay and you're gonna do well, you will do it, you will be okay. The one good thing to do is if you've got a tricky exam question, leave it right till the end. Don't waste too much time on that tricky question. Do the other questions and then just go back to that question at the end, that tricky question at the end. That's what my teachers and my parents always advised me to. And that's what I would advise you guys to do as well, is just leave the tricky questions till the end and go back to them at the end rather than waste too much time on them. And obviously, I think I did pretty well in my exams. I got a level 1 maths, level 2 English. I mean, at least I passed my GCSEs. That was the main thing that I was focusing on, was making sure that I passed my GCSE exams, and at least I can say I did that. At least I can say I achieved that. Obviously passing my GCSE exams was fundamentally important. You know, um, especially when you think about like when I think about what I wanted to go on and do. It was massively important that I passed my GCSE exams, which I did. I was actually one of the first people to actually submit my humanities coursework in on time before the deadline, which was surprising. Um, the problem with the other kids that were in year 11, at the time that I went up, I feel like they didn't really care about, lessons or care about their exams all that much. I'm one of those people who did really care about my exams, and I wanted to do well in my exams, which is why I worked hard and made sure that all of my coursework and everything was submitted on time as it needed to be. I know that probably makes me sound like a bit of a goody teacher's pet, but I think it's better to be focusing on your work. Make sure that you're letting everything, all of your coursework submitted. Make sure that you're attending all of your lessons, so that you can actually get decent grades in your GCSEs. Because in later life, if you mess yourself up and end up doing badly in your GCSEs, in later life you might come back to regret that. You might look back on that and think, well, why didn't I do better in my lessons? Why didn't I work harder in my lessons? Why didn't I do all of the stuff that I needed to do? You know, you might look back on that and think, well, I failed my GCSEs. And you look back and obviously if you fail your GCSEs, you're done at the end of the day. It would be your own fault if you've not, what I mean? The only time you've got to panic is if you've missed a lot of lessons for whatever reason, or you've missed a lot of time off school in general. That would be a bit of a problem. But if you haven't missed that and missed too many lessons, or you haven't missed too much time off school in general, you've not really got anything to worry about. You're okay. All you can do is just try your best. That's all anyone will expect you to do, and will expect of you. Is they will expect you to do the best that you possibly can. I don't think anyone would be expecting you to to be getting an A star grade or a B grade or whatever. I'm sure. Even if you were to get a C or a D, that's still better than nothing. You know, as long as you've passed your GCSEs, then that's the main thing. At least you won't have to look back on life and think, and look back at the fact that about the fact that you failed your GCSEs. At least if you pass your GCSEs, you've got something to look back on and be proud about it, and hold your head high and say that you actually passed your GCSE exams. And as I said, it's important not to think negative, not to think that anything bad is going to go or is going to happen or that something's going to go wrong. Because if you're thinking that, you're tempting fate a little bit, And I think that's the problem. Like, I think, if you're always thinking negative and you're always thinking that the worst is going to happen, I think you're sort of tempting fate a little bit. I think, and I think you don't want to do that. Like, you don't want to tempt fate at all. For me personally, I try to, I think that, going back to my exams, there were a lot of thoughts going through my head at the time. I was thinking so many different things. Like, I was trying to stay positive, but, there were those times where I did get some negative thoughts in my head. I think that, and I can't lie. I did fear that I was going to mess up my exams. That fear was there, and that anxiety was there. You know, I'm not gonna come on and lie and say that I wasn't nervous or that I wasn't anxious in the lead up to my exams because I absolutely was. I think everyone is. I don't think there's anyone who isn't nervous or isn't anxious in the lead up to their exams. Everyone's gonna feel that. Especially when the exam starts a bit closer and closer and closer. When your exams are still sort of months away, you don't really feel too nervous about it. You don't feel too anxious about it. But when your exams start to get closer and closer and closer to the point where they're only sort of a few weeks away or they're only a couple of weeks away, you start to feel that, so anxious and so nervous, you know. But I think you know, as long as you've done all of your work and you've been on all of your lessons, you've not missed too much time off school, etc., etc. You've not really got anything to be too nervous or anxious about. If you've missed a lot of time off school for whatever reason, or you've missed a lot of lessons, then you need to start being feeling very nervous and very anxious because it could. As those are the sorts of things that could have a massive effect on your GCSEs. And this is the thing: you don't want to do anything that would have a negative effect on your GCSE exams or would put your GCSE exams in jeopardy. You don't want to you don't want to do anything like that. You know, as I said, if you put you how to regret that in later life. I think as I said, the best you can do is just do the best you can. You know, um, I mean, I imagine a lot of you guys are probably feeling nervous about the fact that you're leaving school. So at the end of the day, like leaving, when you finish year 11, it's like you're closing, like you're finishing one chapter of your life and you're starting this whole new chapter, and it's like I think it can feel very surreal. It can feel very weird. Knowing, in this chapter of my life is about to come to an end, and a new chapter of my life is about to begin. Like it's crazy. It's huge. Like you know, obviously, it's like when you make that move up from primary school to secondary school, you see all of those people even before you, and you think, well, that'll be me soon. And when it gets time for you to move up to secondary school, you think, am I ready to do this? Am I ready to close this chapter of my life? Am I ready to start this whole new chapter of my life? And it's the same with making that move from when you're getting ready to leave school and and transfer to college, or go to college or whatever, or start an apprenticeship. You're always gonna feel like, am I ready for this? That's one thing that was always playing on my mind. When I was back when I was in year 11, I was always thinking, am I ready to, for this next chapter of my life? Am I ready to finish this chapter of my life and move on? And my teachers kept telling me that they believed I was ready, and they knew I was ready. But I myself personally didn't feel like I was ready. Didn't feel like I was actually ready. I was very there were a lot of thoughts going through my head at the time. I can't lie. You know, it's like you feel so many different emotions. You feel sad because you're getting ready to close this chapter of your life. You're getting ready to say goodbye to all of the other people that in your story. You're getting ready to say goodbye to your teachers. You're getting ready to say, you're leaving a place that you were familiar with, and you've been, especially when you've been at that school for so many years. You know, it had felt quite surreal getting ready to leave the school and say bye bye. And that's how it felt for me on my last day before I finished the May half term, and I went off like I'm back after the May half term. Um, it was weird saying goodbye to all of the other students because we were like, ouch. It wasn't a case of Ash just let me over there. It wasn't a case of goodbye, see you after the May half term. It was a case of goodbye and see you again when we come to visit, because that was it. We weren't going to see them again before we actually left school, which we didn't. It was just crazy, really crazy. Like, just the sort of thoughts that go through your mind at that time. Like, yeah, the thing is with, like, when you're in year 7, 8, and 9, things don't really matter. And, you can be as immature as you want and childish as you want. And if, you can kind of afford to not take things seriously. You know, but when you move into sort of year 10 and 11, you can't really afford to not take things seriously. You have to start taking things seriously at that point. Gone are your days of being immature and childish. You're expected to, by that point, everyone is expecting you to be a lot more mature and a lot more grown up, and expecting you to set that example for the younger, the younger kids in the school. You know, and I remember when I was in year 11, we were always told to, to keep our eye on the younger kids and just, set a good example to that. Which is what you're expected to do. You're always expected to set that good example for the younger kids in the school. As you are the oldest kids in the school. You know, it's like things that weren't that important in year 7, 8, and 9 become so much more important. Things like not doing your work and all that kind of thing, not that important in year 7, 8, and 9. Yeah, you'll get a detention, whatever, whether that be a break time or lunchtime detention, possibly even an after school detention. But yeah, it's not really a matter of life and death. But home year 11, those things basically are a matter of life and death. You don't do your exams, you're screwed. If you don't do these exams, if you don't if you don't follow the rules, if you don't attend your lessons, if you miss time of school, it could be, it could potentially be, potentially be game over. Potentially be a huge mistake, one of the huge mistakes you have to make. I mean, sometimes obviously I know sometimes you can't help missing time or school. You have like hospital appointments and things like that that have to take priority, as well as obviously sometimes you're ill, and you have to miss time or school because of that. I mean, I must be one of the very few people who actually hated being off school ill. Because I had to stay in bed most of the time. I wasn't able to get out of bed, but um, yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, obviously, it's just it's just one of those things. Um, but I mean, obviously, I hope you've enjoyed this video. What I would do a little video kind of chatting about that. I thought this would be a good thing to talk about. It's something I can relate to, and I thought, I thought this video might be a good thing. It might be, give you guys, give some advice to you guys that are in year 11 right now that are getting ready to make that move up to secondary school, to college, whatnot. I know how it feels. I've been where you guys are now. I was a year 11 student 8 years ago, or 7 years ago. So I know what it's like, being where you guys are now, getting ready for your exams, getting ready to leave school. I know how nervous and how scared and how frightened, that can make you feel, because I've been there. I was very scared and frightened myself. I was very nervous, very nervous and anxious about that myself. And so I know how you guys are playing. I fully understand how a lot of you guys might be feeling right now, because I felt that. I've had those feelings myself. I know what it's like to feel nervous, to feel scared about that, because I have been where you guys are now. I was a year 11 student only 7 years ago, and still feels crazy to think it's been that long since I left school. But yeah, it has been that long. Um, but before I end this video, I just want to wish all of you guys that are sitting all of you year 11 students that are sitting your exams this year, the very, very best of luck. You know, good luck to all of you. Um, good luck for your future careers as well. Hopefully you go on to do some amazing, it's amazing things, and hopefully you go on to achieve some amazing things in life. You know, it's like when you leave school, that's it. Your life is just beginning. It's what you're finished. It's like you're closing one chapter of your life, but this whole new chapter of your life is just about to begin. It can be, be excited about it, and be nervous about it, and be scared, and be frightened, and be worried. You feel so many different emotions at that time. You know, and you feel happy because some of you guys might have hated school. I imagine some of you guys are probably over the moon to be getting ready to leave school. Some of you guys probably hate it, but you know, it's okay to it's perfectly fine. to feel nervous, to feel scared, to feel worried. It's not unnatural to feel those kind of emotions when you're getting ready to sit your exams and you're getting ready to leave school, say goodbye to school, or just, a good say goodbye to a place that you've been at for so many years. For some of you guys, you've been at your school since year 7. You started that school in year 7. And now here you are in year 11. And after 4 or 5 years? Oh, yeah, 4 years. Well, no. Yeah, after 4 years, you're getting ready to say goodbye. And saying goodbye, it can be tough. Because you're saying goodbye to everyone that you know. People that you're familiar with, people that you've known for years. People that you've seen every day for so long, It's like leaving primary school going up to secondary school. That would be very nerve wracking as well. You're sort of saying goodbye to a school that you've been at since nursery and making that move up to year 6, like making that move up to year 7. It's like it'd be. Well, I remember when I was getting ready to leave primary school. Well, I've seen everyone going up to school before me, and I was like, that would be me soon. I remember in year 5, when we were in year 5, we've seen the kids going up to secondary, getting ready to up to secondary school, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, this time next year, I'm going to be one of those year 6 kids are now. I'm going to be one of those year 6 kids that is getting ready to go up to secondary school. And it was tough because I was saying goodbye to a place I've been at since nursery. I've been at that school since I was in the nursery. And now here I was as a year 6 kid. We've gone from being those babies in the nursery to now being those big year 6 kids. Getting ready to say goodbye. Move up to secondary school. And I was feeling sad. Don't get me wrong. I was feeling excited for what was ahead. I was feeling nervous. I was feeling worried. I was feeling a lot of different emotions at the time, and you will as well. You will feel a lot of different emotions. It's like, as I said, and it's the same with moving up to year 11, from year 11, that moving up to college. You're saying goodbye to a place you've been at for so many years that you were at since year 7. You've gone from being the young babies of the school in year 7 to now being to being the oldest kids in the school. And you're then ready to say goodbye to people that you've known for a very long time, and that is hard. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is hard, and I know how hard that is to say goodbye to people that you've known for so long. And you've known for so many years. It's not easy. You know. And you have to keep telling yourself that you are ready for this next challenge. You are ready to start this next chapter of your life. You're ready for what lies ahead of you. You're ready for, it's not about whether you're ready for the big wide world. It's about whether the big wide world is ready for you. That's what you need to think. It's like, you shouldn't think, are you ready for the big wide world? It's not, are you ready for the big wide world? It's, is the big wide world ready for you? That is the big question. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a lovely rest of your day. And I will see you for another video. And soon. Bye.